New string, who dis? Welcome to PopCast, a crowd-sponsored yo-yo show. Huge shout out to John Anderson, Talker from Spin Gear, Dr. Lucky, and the rest of my sponsors over on patreon.com/DocPop. And today I'm going to be talking about something kind of unusual. This is a really exciting episode for me because I'm going to talk about blending styles, which a lot of yo-yoing is about creating something and then sharing with other people and then seeing what they do with it and then maybe kind of taking something back. And this has actually gone from yo-yoing to poi, back to yo-yoing or juggling or contact juggling. You can see these kind of cross-pollination happening. And what I'm going to be talking about is actually the cross-pollination of responsive counterweight yo-yoing and unresponsive counterweight yo-yoing. So 5A across the different styles. Now, obviously, when I'm talking about responsive counterweight yo-yoing, what I'm talking about is a responsive yo-yo that you can do like stalls with, but with a counterweight at the end. Now, you've probably seen me doing this. This isn't like something I've invented from whole cloth, but this is something I feel like I've really contributed to and pioneered a lot and put a lot of time into. It's been something that's really gotten me excited about yo-yoing again. It's the idea of just tossing in responsive tricks and 5A tricks together. But, you know, I still play regular 5A, and some of the stuff has kind of cross-pollinated back, which is the theme of the episode. We are going to be talking about how to take tricks that were pioneered with responsive counterweight and how to do them with an unresponsive yo-yo. Stay tuned. No, I'm not going to be using a responsive yo-yo much for this video, but I just kind of want to illustrate this concept that we are doing stuff from stalls, not from sleeping. So normally you would kind of do a sleeping release, but instead what we're going to do is if we're doing a responsive yo-yo, we would start with a stall. And then we would do something like a toss over, like that. So the question is, how do we adapt that to this style? And of course, the answer is obviously going to be with a bind. So this is going to be true with a lot of the tricks that we're going to be showing today. It's going to start off with a stall from a bind. So what you want to do is obviously have a yo-yo that you can kind of like stall with, but you also want to have a higher wall yo-yo. The higher the wall, the better. Something like this Duncan freehand, this is really good for stalls. This is a DIY, a desert island yo-yo. The walls are okay. I'll be honest with you. This is not exactly, there's worse yo-yos. There's like V-shaped yo-yos. This is a little tricky for what we're doing today. But by high walls, what I'm talking about are the inner areas here. And the reason you want high walls is to catch those stalls more easy. If you have more room, more high wall going from the bearing and out, that's where the yo-yo can stack up and kind of keep the yo-yo upright. If the yo-yo flares out quickly, then what you're going to have is a harder time balancing the yo-yo. So we're going to start with like a trapeze, toss it off, do your bind, and then what you're going to do is you're going to try to bind and catch into a string stall. So let's do that. Like that. Now this is what I'm talking about by a stall. And you can see the yo-yo's kind of, leaning a little bit, which is going to happen. The higher the wall, the less lean you have. But something you can do to kind of reduce that lean is to give that check mark shape. By check mark, I'm talking about this shape right here. Instead of keeping a straight line, if I had a straight line, the yo-yo would just fall off. But if I have this check mark, it's going to have an easier time balancing on. Now, the other thing, when you're doing that stall, you want to stall it as close as you can to your freehand. Right? So we are trying to do, and this is actually kind of similar to if you're doing a trapeze, you want to do a catch oftentimes really close to your finger. Here I'm like an inch away. And then you also have about a hip's width. You keep your arms at a hips width. Keep your arms about this far, right? Because what you want to do is you don't want to choke up on the string. You want to have lots of string here. So I've got the string is really close. The yo-yo is really close to my finger here. And then I've got about a foot of string here, about an inch here and a foot here. And now I'm in my stall with a counterweight. And now what I can do is I can toss and pull over. So it's going to look like this. We are bind, catch, right? I'm really close. And then I'm going to hold the yo-yo here. You don't normally hold the yo-yo, but what I'm going to do is hold the yo-yo so you can see that I'm in that stall, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss the counterweight over. And once I've tossed over, once I've done this toss and catch, and again, that's going over the hand. And I like to kind of like layer it on. So now we've got 2 layers of string there. So when I do that toss over, I'm going around and catching with 2 layers. And then what you're going to do is unroll, bind. So the last thing you do is you're going to bind the opposite direction. You've done a kind of basic regeneration. So the yo-yo is spinning kind of this way instead of this way. So you're going to have to change that bind. So let's put that all together in a trick. You got your trick. Now let's do our bind, toss, reverse bind, and now we are back in that front. So basically what we did was we kind of added a little flourish regeneration. We did our stall. We did a toss over of the counterweight. We kicked it back out and we regenerated. We bind again. And now we're back in that forward throw again. It does help to do a trick beforehand to kind of kill off that spin. You don't want to toss like a hard spinning yo-yo and then try to bind because it'll be too quick. So a soft toss to start off with, but also like burn some spin, burn some of that energy, and then catch your stall. That's going to be easier to do. When I'm doing my stall, I don't let it stall long. I don't hold out a stall. And that's partially because of this yo-yo, right? Like I said, this yo-yo is not a high wall yo-yo. It's designed for a totally different style than the platypus is. Again, you want to talk about high walls. This is all wall. Oops, all wall. Hardly any wall. So these yo-yos are going to spin. They're going to stall a lot more consistently. So what I do, instead of really trying to stay in a stall, I actually like to really quickly do my toss over. So I try not to spend much time. I just go toss, right? I almost toss as I'm catching that bind. As that bind starts, I've already started that toss over. Okay, so we have this basic idea that you're going to do a bind, catch a stall, and land in a trapeze, catch the yo-yo really close in that stall, really close to your freehand finger, toss over your counterweight. Now, there's a lot of other stuff from the responsive counterweight style that you can take from here. For instance, you could do, I forget what it's called. I call it the boop bop. but you can do the toss, hit it, catch. Boop. So what I did there is I did that toss over. I hit the counterweight. So I do that toss over, I hit and catch it out. And I start my regeneration at that same time. All right, let's get on to our next responsive counterweight trick, the Iceberg Stall, which I might have mentioned earlier. What we're going to do is we're going to bind and catch the yo-yo palm down. Now, this is backwards from how we usually catch the counterweight yo-yo. Usually what we do is we catch it sort of palm up or thumb up, right? So my hand is this way. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try to catch it this way. And the reason for that is because I want to hold the yo-yo in a way where I can let go and the counterweight will spin around. So if I catch it the normal way, we don't have that scenario where the yo-yo is kind of wrapped up underneath. But here is how we want to catch the yo-yo. So we are doing do your tricks, whatever you want to do your bind and catch it palm down. And when I catch it palm down, I'm actually going to catch my thumb on one side, my pointer finger on the other. And then I'm holding the counterweight with my middle finger, with my pinky. These fingers are just saying hi. It's walking around. Right? But I've got thumb on one side and this pointer finger on the other. And then that way I can let go. And speaking of letting go, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to let go of the counterweight and then let go of the yo-yo. And what you want to do is you want to try to catch the yo-yo on the back of your hand. Like that. And you'll note here, this is totally up to you. Obviously, this is based on contact juggling. You'll note that I'm on my middle finger. I like to catch that yo-yo balancing right on my middle finger, and my pointer and ring finger are just on either side. I also have the yo-yo sitting right between that first knuckle, right there. So it's basically just kind of catching the yo-yo on the back of my palm and just resting. You don't want to catch it like back here. You want to catch it kind of on your fingers. And the counterweight is just dangling below. So from here, once you caught this, what you're going to do is, and just to be clear, I catch the string between my pointer and ring finger. From here, what you're going to do is toss up, pull, and then do a regen. So I am tossing up, grabbing the counterweight, pulling down, and then my other hand comes in, and I do like a little pinwheel. And then you are now spinning forward direction. So what you want to do is catch on the back side of the string and pull up. So that's the Iceberg Stall, traditionally done with a responsive yo-yo. Now, one of the advantages of doing it with the yo-yo like this is a lot easier to balance on your hand, right? This narrow yo-yo, the platypus, it takes a lot more finesse to kind of get it on there. But when you're doing it with a wide yo-yo, like a normal kind of 5A yo-yo, you're gonna have a much easier time keeping it stationary on your hand. Now, one other tip for the Iceberg Stall, when you catch that yo-yo, try dropping your hand with the yo-yo. So you don't just kind of like hold your hand here and let the yo-yo go bap. What you try to do is you try to position it and then slowly drop your hand with the yo-yo. You can kind of practice this in general with the yo-yo or with anything else. You can just kind of practice catching on the back of your hand and trying to gently drop. And this is actually the fundamentals of contact juggling, which I'm really into and which is what inspired this trick. Okay, last trick we're going to talk about is the Flirt Flip, which looks like this. So the Flirt Flip is the yo-yo is wound up back in your hand, but you're going to do a flip of the yo-yo and completely let go of the yo-yo. So it's kind of rotating on two axes. You grab the counterweight and you crank it. And the reason you're doing those flips is to set it up where you can't just like take the yo-yo and throw it again because you're actually trying to turn the direction of the yo-yo. So this is how we're going to do that. If you remember the Iceberg Stall, remember that palm down catch that we did? We're going to repeat that again for the Flirt Flip. So we are palm down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that trick where we let go of the yo-yo. But instead of like letting all the way go and then trying to catch it on, what we're actually going to do is we're going to let go and then actually, swear to God, this is what's happening. It's really crazy. We're going to give the yo-yo a 180-degree flip. We're going to try to let go and give the yo-yo a tiny little toss up. And as you can see, when you do that toss up, you are actually in the position where if I were to grab this counterweight and throw it, I'm ready to go again. So if I didn't give it that flop, I couldn't grab it and throw it this way. I'd have to throw it to the right. But if I give it a let go and I let the yo-yo rotate 180 degrees, right? Hopefully. Then when that yo-yo does its flip, I grab and throw. As crazy as it sounds, it actually works out kind of magically because when I do that release and do that flip, I'm releasing and trying to get the counterweight to do a full rotation. And when I do that, right, I'm not just kind of like spinning it forward. I'm going all the way around. It's what I'm trying to do with that rotation before I do this rotation with my wrist. And what's going to happen is the yo-yo kind of magically wants to straighten itself. If you catch it palm down, you do that release and you do a flip, what's going to happen is it's actually going to flip, and then this rotation is going to straighten it out, right? This momentum from here. So it actually just kind of sets it up where you don't have to be crazy precise to do it. So just know that when you're doing a flirt flip, you're really just kind of doing a cool flourish. And maybe you want to focus on bringing the yo-yo back and not trying to do a long trick with it. All right, that's it for this episode of PopCast, the crowd-sponsored yo-yo show. Again, thanks to all my sponsors over on patreon.com/DocPop. During one of our monthly meetings is where I had the idea to kind of teach these tricks that I've been doing, and I didn't even think about doing a tutorial for. People liked it so much during there that we are making this podcast episode. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, check out the YouTube playlist that is filled with tutorials for responsive counterweight tricks and all sorts of other stuff. That's all on my YouTube channel. You can also go to drpopular.com to pick up a DIY yo-yo or a platypus yo-yo, which is the bomb for counterweight yo-yoing with a responsive counterweight. Boop, 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 boop. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.